One thing medical students are prone to do is to underestimate your value.
I think I was surprised by how much I could actually do for my patients, even during my clerkship year. One patient in particular, an elderly woman who I don't remember anymore why she was in the hospital, but I was doing a somewhat awkward but very thorough medical student physical exam, and I actually found a small breast mass that other people had missed.
The really good doctors are not necessarily the ones who have the most knowledge. They're the ones who can take whatever data is available and come up with a new diagnosis or come up with a new treatment. Learning to synthesize data, learning what facts are important, which facts are irrelevant. That's what I had learned, wish I had learned to do earlier on. And that's what I really continue to train myself to do now.
Put the patient first.
I was on my first internal medicine rotation. I admitted this patient who was, I think he was 41 or 42, and he was a homeless man who'd been found down by the police, intoxicated, and when he was in the emergency department, they discovered that he had alcoholic hepatitis, so he was admitted. He was the first patient who was wholly mine.
Think about their needs, why they're there, how afraid they are.
He had to go to the ICU for a while, and he came back, and we really took him through two major life-threatening events. Since I had a whole lot of time, because I only had like 2 other patients to take care of, I got to know him pretty well. It turned out he'd been a music teacher in the local high school for a bunch of years. He had a wife and an 8-year-old child from whom he was estranged.
Where they are in life right now can be awfully scary, awfully daunting, and awfully confusing.
He just had this really powerful family history of alcoholism. He'd been a heavy drinker most of his life, and in the last couple of years, he'd just really gone off the rails.
This is the opportunity you have to really forge close relationships from them.
Every day I talked with him about that and what he wanted to do with his life, and he'd almost died. And one morning he said, you know, I don't want to be this person anymore. And all he had to do was leave the hospital and walk 2 blocks down to get to the Salvation Army facility, and he couldn't be transported directly there because I think he had to voluntarily admit himself. We were so excited and we wished him well, and like the nurses washed and cut his hair, and social work had found him some new clothes. We sent him on his way and he never showed up. 2 days later he rolled into the ER. He was drunk and he had new lacerations on his face, and I was devastated because I had already in my mind had him in the bosom of his family again. You know, I remember my resident had sort of put his arm around me and like, buck up, little camper, you know, this will happen. 6 months later, I was in the hospital somewhere, and the same resident came up to me and said, you have to read this. And it was this 2-page, tightly spaced, handwritten letter, and it was from this patient. And he'd found his way to rehab, and he'd been dry for like 4 or 5 weeks, and he'd reached out to his wife, and they were sort of negotiating how he's going to get re-involved in his son's life again. And it was so amazing, and he, you know, named all of us, and he was so grateful and thankful that we'd taken time and helped him through what he described as a very dark period. This is what being in medicine is.
So I was a P&S student too. I started my major clinical year on medicine because I knew it was what I wanted to do. I was young, having skipped a year coming into medical school, and one of the patients on our floor was a senior college student with a lymphoma. And he actually took his final exams in the hospital during that month to be able to graduate. Unfortunately, the following week he passed away, and all of us had liked him very much and had gotten enmeshed in his care. The next day, we went to the pathology lab on rounds, and he was presented as a man in the pan. And those of us who knew him and cared for him didn't have professional distance and mourned for him. And I wanted to be sure that each of you knows that caring for your patients means being involved in their lives. And losing your patient is trauma for you as well as for the family, and you should recognize that. And mourning for losing a patient is part of being a very good doctor.
At that time, I had pretty much solidly decided that I was going to become an orthopedist. And I was doing my medicine rotation. I was working hard and doing well, but it was just a really, really, really hard month. And the hardest thing about it, my very first day, I picked up an incredibly sick patient who had this very rare condition called Hammond-Ridge syndrome, and it's acute interstitial pneumonitis. She never really got better, and she passed away on the last day of my rotation. It was one of the saddest things that happened to me in all of medical school. And my attending pulled me aside and he said, I just want to let you know you did a great job, but these things happen and you have to know how to handle them, and that just comes with experience. And I wanted to thank you for taking care of her, but know that I understand how difficult this was for you. And I appreciated that. And he said, and I know you're not going into medicine, are you, Bill? And I said, no, I'm definitely not going into medicine. And I matched in orthopedics, and I went to an orthopedics residency. And after a year in orthopedics, I said, listen, this is not for me. I miss medicine too much. And I switched, and I went and did another internship in medicine, residency in medicine, and that was brought me to Columbia, and I've been here ever since. And now I'm a pulmonologist taking care of patients like that one I took care of as a medical student.
I want to wish all of you well in starting the major clinical year and congratulate you on finishing fundamentals. We prepared you for becoming a doctor and joining the healthcare team, and we are delighted with your progress.
My mother sat me down and she said, there's something you need to remember. You're a bright kid, but what's going to make you a good doctor is not what you got up here, but what you carry in here.
Don't curse during a procedure.
You're important, and don't think you're not.
You're amazing, don't forget it, and you've got lots of friends in high places to help you along the way, so good luck.